Joining us today is Joe Greco, president of Lord Aeck Sargent, who is now an independent architectural firm again after a stint with Katerra. And Joe and I are going to have a little conversation about kind of what the future bodes for the firm. Joe, tell me a little bit, give me a little bit of background, if you may, about kind of how all this transpired. It's a little unusual for a company to kind of reemerge Phoenix-like from the ashes of another. But tell me a little bit about the mechanics of this, if you would.
Sure. Well, just taking it back just a little bit, we were Lord Aeck Sargent was acquired by Katerra about 3 years ago. It was, we were intrigued by the opportunity to kind of join up with a larger company that was really sort of focused on trying to transform the design and construction industry. There was a deep interest in mass timber that was a big part of the Katerra mission. Lord Aeck Sargent had done a fair amount of that type of work and certainly had a deep sustainability interest. So there was a pretty good alignment. There was some alignment with the project types, and all of that sounded fairly interesting at the time. I would say that there was a lot of good work that Katerra did, but there was also some probably situation where they were out in front of their capabilities potentially, and it took a little bit of time to kind of catch up to that. And unfortunately, I don't know that they ever completely caught up to that. The world changed in terms of sort of venture capital funding and whatnot. In any event, we were informed by Katerra that they were going to cease their North American operations. It was, I think, in May of this year.
Right.
Because we had been sort of a standalone entity within that, we were a wholly owned subsidiary. And I would say, a solid 95% of our work had continued on, unabated, unchanged from what we had done prior to joining Katerra. We maybe did have a 4 or 5% overlap on some projects, but it wasn't a great deal. They knew that it would be a relatively easy thing to kind of stand us back up if we were so interested in doing so. So in rough terms, the previous partners, in addition to some new partners, decided to essentially buy the company back from Katerra. And we simply worked through that process. It's taken a good month or a month and a half to complete the process. But we feel like we've come out on the other side with a lot of new knowledge and a lot of good lessons learned, and a lot of the same sort of strengths and positive client relationships we had previously going in. And I guess I'd add that we weren't the only firm that sort of emerged Phoenix-like from that. There was another architectural firm and some contracting entities that were also in a similar boat, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious. This is a little bit beyond the scope of our conversation, but I'm just wondering. When a company goes bankrupt or closes, there's all kinds of asset transfer and asset liabilities for some of their businesses. How did you escape that?
We essentially used in fact, it's the same method, but we used the asset purchase process. We essentially took all of our essentially all of our contracts. We took essentially the same employee staff, and we made some lease changes through the process, but everything was very, very minor. But it is a process done through the transparency of the Katerra Bankruptcy Court. It was sort of as a set aside off to one side where they handled the Lord Aeck Sargent piece. So it's done under full transparency, and essentially the process is that the original principals essentially bid on the company, and we were the selected bidder and moved forward in that arrangement. There are other sales mechanisms for that, but that was not the one we used.
Mm-hmm. Joe, tell me a little bit about the LAS 2.0. How is your company going to be the same? How is it going to be different?
I think the way it's going to be the same is our focus on really delivering what we call responsive design. It's an approach to design, and it's typically used on a kind of wide range of project types. Most of them are complicated, interesting design problems, but we have a very sort of inclusive, interactive, collaborative process with our clients. All of that stays absolutely the same. I think our client list stays pretty much the same. We do probably 80+% of our work are repeat clients. A lot of that is in the higher education space. We also do a fair amount of multifamily work with developers, typically more urban and sort of growing urbanism type projects. And we do planning as well as interiors. And most of those client types, again, we continue to serve the same people throughout the 3 years we were with Katerra, in addition to meeting a few new developers through that process. So all of that stays pretty much the same. I think the thing that maybe is different is we are going to expand our ownership to kind of include people, and I guess I'll describe as the next generation. So it's a broadened ownership from previously. But it is.
Joe, are these going to be employees, existing employees that you're going to extend ownership equity to?
There will be people that did not have equity prior to Katerra that will have equity going forward. That's correct.
Okay, that's interesting. Was that? Can I be so bold as to suggest that is that part of that was to keep people?
I would say it's more just a philosophical change. This is an opportunity to take the best of what we were. We actually were a company that had transitioned from three founding partners. It was Lord Aeck and Sargent, and it had grown to be 15 or 16 or something like that. We were wanting to sort of continue that mission of having the people who do and produce and win the work to be truly vested in the company. So I'd say it's a continuation of that same philosophy, but it is taking it to the next generation. I would probably agree that it's the right thing to do, and therefore maybe in the interest of retaining staff. But I think there was, frankly, some real interest in having that complete self-control. Not that we were unable to control our business working under the ownership of Katerra. We generally were able to do that. But there, obviously were some things where we would like to have complete control of our destiny, and this allows us to do that.
Mm-hmm. Will you be expanding your practice base to any extent? You have 8 practices now. Will you be moving into anything new as a result of this kind of newfound independence?
No, the plan right now is to essentially continue with that grouping and to grow them. I would say we probably have expanded our geography a little bit through the Katerra process, and I expect that we will probably continue to see that. We've got a few more projects that are a little further away than might have been in the past, and we hope to build on that.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly are working with a few new clients that came through the Katerra relationship, and we hope to continue those as well.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff you're working on right now? You said you were able to carry that over from what you had been working on with Katerra. Tell us about some of the projects that you're working on of note.
We recently had, these are a couple new projects that we were selected for a marine lab in the University of Florida. We've another laboratory project at Marshall University, and a new project at UNC Greensboro. Those are all 2 of the 3 are clients that we've had relationships with in the past. We have had, with the higher ed projects, there are often very long running projects. So we continue to serve projects out of all of our locations, headquartered in the Southeast. So a large grouping of universities around there. We're currently working with Georgia Tech on some major projects. Mm-hmm. We recently completed the Candida building in a partnership with another architect at Georgia Tech. That's sort of the deep green one. You're probably aware of that. We use sort of our regional offices to help be close to the clients and be able to give the best possible service. So all of that is still intact, and really all of our offices are busy right now.
Mm-hmm. Joe, where do you see growth for your company? Obviously, being part of a larger entity like Katerra, it gave you all kinds of possibilities. But as an independent architectural firm right now, what are some of the sweet spots that you'd like to impress?
Well, 2 in particular, we're very well known for our science work, science laboratories. There's obviously with recent events, there's maybe a renewed interest in science out there from the pandemic. So we expect to continue to do a lot of that. We've had a lot of success winning major projects in that area. We also have a pretty deep portfolio with historic preservation work, and that ranges from work for agencies like the Park Service, but it also relates to our higher ed work where, if you can imagine, most campuses have got significant historic structures, and we wind up sort of in many cases combining different practice areas to work together. So that's one of the two of the strong suits in particular. I think the areas of growth might be maybe more regional, continuing to expand that to our regional offices. We're getting more work in the higher ed space in sort of the mid-Atlantic area, and we've continued to grow our practice in Texas as well, working for major schools there. So we can hope to continue to do that. We definitely have begun to do some larger and very interesting private development projects. There's a major one going on the west side of Atlanta right now. Recently completed a very large, I should say large, tall mid-rise condo in Buckhead that just won an AIA award. Very nice project there. And we're continuing to kind of build in that private development space as well. Again, typically on the sort of more interesting, more complicated projects that are, kind of bring an urban, walkable communities kind of attitude to them.
Did you have to bring new people into the company for the residential work that you're doing right now, or was that already ingrained?
That has been in the company for a long time. We had done some work, and then we had a small acquisition maybe 15 years ago or something like that. But it's essentially homegrown at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty thriving practice area.
Has the company given any thought to international growth, either in Canada, Mexico, or beyond that?
We have occasionally thought of it. We did a rail station in China, maybe 10 years ago. It was a very interesting project. It came out somewhat in the vicinity of the way we designed it. It's an interesting process, the way construction gets delivered there. It actually is a very nice project. But we have tended to sort of focus on the United States, where we sort of understand the rules of the game a bit more predictably. So at this point, I wouldn't say we have significant international aspirations, at least in the short term.
Mm-hmm. To grow the way you'd like to, what, if any, internal changes do you think you're going to need to make? The giving the younger generation in your company equity is certainly a step in that direction, I would suspect. But I'm just wondering, are there any other changes that the company's going to need to make to meet the demand that you're anticipating over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
Well, I think there is it may sound trite or whatever, but I think it's empowering. It's also empowering. It's not just the ownership, but it's really trying to let the next generation help shape where the business wants to go, and to sort of give them a vocal seat at the table. I mean, it ranges from everything from sort of a work future approach that perhaps responds to some of the things we learned during COVID. I'm sure we're going to end up with a much more flexible workspace. As you can see, I'm still working from home, at least today anyway.
Yeah.
But I think we are trying to make it a very sort of inclusive, more diverse company going forward, and with a lot more voices in it. And I think we've usually found that when we've empowered sort of the next gen, we get growth out of it, because there is sort of that feeling of ownership and sort of helping to win that next project and build the relationships with your key clients.
Well, Joe, thanks for taking a couple minutes to talk to me about this. I wish you good luck in your new life, and we'll keep an eye on how this moves forward.
Great, John. I appreciate you doing the interview, and we are looking forward to it. I think our plan is to take the best of what we were before, learn the most of what we did for the last 3 years, and ever so subtly reinvent ourselves going forward to be even better. So.
And before I let you go, this experience the last 3 years, what did that tell you, or how did that inform your thinking about just the direction the company should be taking? What I'm thinking about is about the whole issue about consolidation within the industry, for example, the whole industry about getting into something like mass timber in a bigger way. What does that tell you about how you might pursue those types of things in the future?
I think we're, not of the mind that we would want to be acquired, although I think we would still look to, on occasion, acquire other smaller companies that we
Yeah.
think fit into our umbrella. We've done that 4 or 5 times in the past to build bench strength and to get into new markets or new locations. So I don't know that we would stop doing that. I do think that there is a lot of consolidation, and one of the things that was attractive to Katerra was that it wasn't exactly a consolidation. It allowed us to essentially operate still as ourselves, but to sort of open the potential to some new things that we probably otherwise would have had a hard time getting into, such as a strong connection to the mass timber side. Unfortunately, some of those things didn't work out, as we had planned. Although I think we learned a lot that we'll be able to take forward and essentially bring some of that knowledge to our clients, even if it's delivered in a more traditional way.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for your time. It's nice talking to you.
You bet, John. Take care.